Hello, everyone, and welcome to Developing Palates. I am Aaron Loomis, and along with me, as always, is June Liu. How you doing, June?
Good, man. It's been did you step outside today? It was like 90 degrees today.
Yeah, they're putting new windows in my house today, so my house was wide open. At one point, it had no more windows in it, so it was just open to
Oh,
the elements, and it was pretty toasty today. So,
oh man. This is not what we paid California what for.
right,
You don't expect shit like this.
it still wasn't as bad as yesterday, though. That's
Yeah,
what
true.
was interesting. So, but it's
Too
supposed to,
soon for summer.
yeah, it's gonna cool off though, so I think we're in good shape.
Yeah.
Just in time for the weekend.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about the Flor Dominicana La Nox. This is a cigar that was released in September of 2015. It is 6.5 inches by 50, so Toro-ish. It is out of Tabacalera La Flor in Dominican Republic. Wrapper is Brazilian Cubra Maduro. Binder is Mexican San Andres, and the filler is Dominican Republic. And this is actually blended by Tony Gomez, Lito's son. So it's a little departure from some of the other LaFleurs that are out there. So let's kind of just jump right into it. June, what was your kind of experience with the pre-light of this cigar?
I thought the cigar look was absolutely fantastic. I thought that it had a really pretty hearty and rustic dark brown wrapper to it. It kind of had this like red hue, which
Mm-hmm.
is very and which is awesome looking. I'm not usually the kind of band looking at the band and admire band kind of guy,
You're
but
not a band geek?
yeah, I'm not a band geek, and I don't. I do say bands, but I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with them. But the band mixing with that dark brown, kind of like the Colorado Red / Oscuro kind of a thing going on,
Uh-huh.
was really pretty. It almost made me feel like the cigar wanted to be smoked at nighttime in the evening,
Right.
because the band had this like what I call like a midnight blue look to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, the actual presentation was great. The roll, the bunching, the rolling, and all that felt good. It had a good give to it. It didn't have any soft spots. The head was finished off with a really good, super thick triple cap. Um, so in terms of the pre-light aromas, when I smell the wrapper, I got a lot of sweet floral perfume. I got some fresh cedar, some barnyard. Nosing the foot, I got a pretty pungent amount of white pepper,
Mm-hmm.
um, and hay. And this is a flavor that I probably never get in a cigar. I picked up Mexican chocolate,
Okay.
which is kind of like that spicy chocolate that they
Mm-hmm.
have. For those of you that have never tasted Mexican chocolate, it's kind of like a spicy version of a chocolate. So that's what I got out of it. And then on the cold draw, I got namely a tingling white pepper, and just like natural tobacco notes of like sawdust and that.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah, very nice looking cigar. I mean, really dark brown. If you kind of look at it really closely, at least on my sample, it kind of looked like a bit of a turtle shell type um, pattern. And kind of what you were talking about, like in the kind of some larger areas, you see like that dark reddish hue to it. And then like I don't know what you would call the borders are more like the really dark brown, almost black color.
Hmm.
So it was a pretty nice looking cigar, especially when you got it even up close. You know, in a cigar that's really dark, it's typically already hard to see the seams. So no different here. The seams were nearly invisible. Caps were applied really nicely. And then like you're talking about the bands, two bands on this. First band says LFD, and second band says Lennox. Really nice color pattern that goes along with the wrapper color. So nice pairing there. Um, in regards to aromas, wrapper gave me like a light sweet hay and some barnyard. And the foot gave me a bit of sweetness, but more like a kind of cherry sweetness. And then on the pre-light draw, I got a little dustiness to my tongue, small particles of tobacco or whatever it is. I got that kind of sensation, but I also got some of that same cherry sweetness that I got from the aroma from the foot. So it was that was a very nice start or a starting experience to the cigar. So let's get into the actual important part, and that's the flavor. So first third through final third. What was your flavor experience?
Sure. I thought that when I smoked like the first half of the first third, there's a lot of faint notes. I didn't pick up a lot of distinct flavors.
Hmm.
I thought that the flavors had a pretty dry profile, and specifically in terms of flavors, a bunch of dry cocoa. I got some dry biscuits out of it. Initially, I got some floral perfume out of it, and sweet creamy milk, kind of like in a way like in those canned uh, condensed milk that you get.
Right.
Not the super sweetness out of it, but like kind of like that.
Hmm.
So within kind of going through the first half of the first third, um, it was just mainly that flavor profile. On the retro, it was namely cedar, a little bit of white pepper, and the finish was a really light dry wood.
Hmm.
And in the beginning, it was like a medium full dry tannins going on. So past that halfway mark in the first third, um, the profile got noticeably sweeter,
Hmm.
um, and I was able to get more of a more full palate layering tannins. So the tannins kind of was fuller, and that sweeter note kind of overtook a lot of the other notes that I tasted. So I guess with that said, it feels like I tasted a lot of that Brazilian wrapper to it.
Hmm.
Of what I heard, Brazilian wrapper um, could be a bit too sweet, or just really sweet in general.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what I got out of it. So moving up to the second third, I got a lot of sweet cream, kind of like the continuation of that from the first third. Still got the dried biscuits. So kind of the midway through the cigar in general, I got cedar and white pepper spice picked up, and when these picked up, it was actually a really welcoming thing because it felt like it broke away from that sweetness and it kind of added more of a robust a flavor profile instead
Hmm.
of just kind of being that one note sweetness. So moving to the last third, the last third for the first half of it was exactly like what I tasted in the second third, but as I got to the latter second half of the last third, I actually got a bit of bitterness.
Hmm.
And typically, when I taste bitterness, is something that's not favorable. It's something that I dislike. But in this scenario, I really welcomed the bitterness, and kind of like when I was talking about the wood and the white pepper picking up in the second third, because of the bitterness, it combated that overly sweetness that I got.
Hmm.
So overall, flavor profile wise, the main thing for most that I have to say is a lot of sweet, creamy notes, and that was kind of countered by white pepper, um, and then um, the wood notes from it.
Right.
So, yeah. What about you?
Right after I lit up, I was getting like a dark chocolate flavor, with a bit of woodiness on the retrohale, and that only lasted for a few draws, and the chocolate went away. But I was getting earthy wood with a little bit of pepper. Those were kind of the core flavors that went on after the first few draws. Like 3/4 of an inch in or so, the pepper faded away, and then it was primarily earth and wood. And then the retrohale was earthy, but it also had a little bit of minerality to it, so it was pretty nice. A little further on in the third, I was getting like black coffee and black tea, kind of like fading in and out on various draws. Like I'd get I'd get the coffee, and then I'd get the tea, and then the coffee would come back, and then the tea would come back. So it was kind of a very interesting, like dynamic type experience there. And then kind of nearing the end of the third, the coffee kind of just took over. The black tea went away, and it was the coffee that stayed in there. Um, and then the right at the end, the retrohale became more full, with the earthiness and the minerality. So it was, you're getting a lot of experience there, both on the flavor in the mouth and on the retrohale. Moving into the second third, the minerality actually came into the mouth flavor. So now it's on both. And that mixed in with the earthiness in the wood. And then I also started to get a little bit of creaminess that was creeping in. And a little further in, the sweetness came. So a lot of those same flavors that you were mentioning, I was starting to experience here in the second third. About halfway into the third, started a little bit of char that was mixing with the woodiness, and the woodiness now became a little bit more defined as oak for me, and the cream was still there. And then moving on, about an inch and a half in, the char went away, and then it was primarily oak and cream. And then nearing the end of the third, the char came back, and then the minerality was, showed back up on the retrohale. But it became very light and mellow. So it was the minerality, really light oak and light creaminess there. Final third, um, oak again. Retrohale was oak and cream. Um, Minerality, kept fading in and out of the retrohale. That comes back, and the retrohale became even more creamy at that point. And then a little bit further in, the smoke got a little dry for, I don't know, maybe a half dozen draws or so, and then that went away. And then I'd say around the halfway point of the final third, I started to get a little bit of mintiness that came in. And then as the cigar kind of wrapped up, primarily oak flavor, and then on the retrohale it was oak and that mild mintiness on the retrohale. So, and then pretty much the entire way through the cigar, I felt the strength was just slightly above medium. So not, I know some people have mentioned that it's a fairly strong cigar, but I didn't really experience that strength wise. So,
Question for you:
yeah,
how sweet in the spectrum of sweetness that you taste in non-infused cigars, of course, was this for you?
it
Because
wasn't.
this was
It
really
wasn't like it wasn't way. I don't think I got the level of sweetness that you got. And really, for me, it was really only kind of in that second third is where I saw it, and it wasn't like overly sweet, and it definitely wasn't the dominant characteristic. It was just really mixing well with all the other flavor, and there were a lot of flavors kind of going on at the same time at that point. So I don't think I got the same kind of level that you got.
gotcha.
So performance wise, burn and draw, how did this cigar treat you?
The burn I thought was really good. I had very solid inch and a half mark of ashes. The ash itself was like it was like a snowy white kind of a ash,
Yep.
and uh, based upon me going to AJ's factory and talking to one of AJ's right hand man, or one of his workers, let's just say, uh, he said that when the ash is like that, it's a really good sign. It means really good fermentation has happened.
Hmm.
Um, so, and actually, speaking of this, some people might think this is sacrilegious, but I did it anyways. So, this is the second sample I smoked. The first sample that I smoked about like a week prior to this one. So I think I
Uh-huh.
smoked this sample earlier this week. I
Hmm.
think on like Monday, but I smoked the first sample of it like 5 days ago. And that sample was like the wrapper was absolutely beat up to shit. And at one point, I was just smoking the binder and the fillers. But anyways, so one thing I did was I got bored of just smoking those flavors without the wrapper, and I cut the cherry off, and I unraveled all the fillers and the binder.
Hmm.
And when I just put a match to it and lit it up, and this is something we did at the Asian factory, so to kind of gauge how well the tobacco was fermented, you could just light the leaf and then see how well it burns by itself.
Hmm.
And kind of true to my understanding from the factory tour, uh, just after once hit with the soft flame, all the binder completely, burned through by itself. The only one that didn't burn through by itself, which makes sense, is the Ligero.
Right.
So, anyways, so good fermented tobacco. So they did a good job there at Lito's factory in his tobacco, and which is no surprise. I mean, I don't smoke a lot of Lito Gomez stuff, but within the few that I smoke, every single one of them has been just construction wise been really good.
Right.
Uh, so that's the burn marks. The ash. In terms of the burn, the consistency of burn, it was absolutely razor sharp. It was razor sharp throughout the entire cigar. And I think this is the one where when I took the burn picture, I kind of ashed every mark.
Hmm.
And then at the end, I took a picture of the entire ash that went through the cigar.
Right.
And you could tell by my picture that it was just, burned fantastically. So in terms of draw, I thought it was a good draw overall. It was a little snug for my preference, but I'm just being completely nitpicky at that point. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, for me, the burn was very good. It wasn't razor sharp because there were times where the wrapper didn't burn in certain areas, but it always caught up on itself, and it didn't require me to do anything to make that happen. Just kind of rotating the cigar and things like that, and it always caught up on its own. Like you're saying, ash was great, held in an inch plus every time, so there was really no complaints in regards to that. The draw for me was very good as well. Slightly tighter than I prefer, but it's nothing really to complain about, and didn't affect my experience with the cigar at all. So overall, what were your thoughts on this cigar?
So I didn't know that this was blended by Lito's son, Tony,
Hmm.
until you just talked about it.
Way to
Uh,
look! Way to look at the notes.
yeah, literally, yeah, no. Hey, it's the smoking experience that matters. But what I was trying to say within that, to getting to that point, was in my overall, I wrote that this didn't taste like a typical Lito Gomez cigar to me.
Hmm.
And I could see why that is now,
Right.
because it wasn't Lito that blended the fucking cigar. Uh, and then because with a lot of Lito cigars, I get there's this like quintessential, like a sharp, fresh cedar to it, and Lito does this wood profile very uniquely, and I've never tasted it with anybody else's tobacco. But his like wood flavor to me is like a typically like a really sharp kind of a wood.
Hmm.
And of course, what Lito's known for is he typically blends on the stronger side of things, right?
Right.
So for me, Lito cigars are full strength cigars. What's interesting about the review sample I smoked was I thought the strength and body was at just a solid medium throughout the entire cigar.
Hmm.
So when I smoked that first one, I thought the strength was just absolutely kick my ass. Like my body was numb, like I smoked some weed.
Right.
Uh, but I think the difference may be the fact that the first one that I smoked, I mean, that was probably my like fourth cigar today,
Hmm.
and I haven't had the last meal I ate was probably like 6 or 7 hours ago
Right.
prior to smoking that. Whereas this one and any cigar that I do like for like the legit review,
Hmm.
I try to eat like usually half an hour or so before I actually light up the cigar. So I
Right.
had a really hefty meal in preparation for the review cigar because especially knowing that the first one really screwed me.
Yeah.
It really fucked up my, my ish. So, but I was really surprised to know that the strength was just a pure medium. But when I especially took apart the binder and fillers, I mean, you could see. You could even have to do this, but like if you just look at the foot, you could see the couple leaves that just really like almost jet black Ligero that's used in there.
Right.
So there's Ligero in there, but
Hmm.
it wasn't that strong for me on the second run. Anyways, so with all that said, I still thought that the cigar was good. Um, One thing I don't really like is if I taste a cigar and it's overly sweet for me,
Hmm.
and just if it's just sweet and creamy, is the dominant notes. I'm not a fan of it, and I kind of felt like this was that, and that's why I thought that the first third was kind of average, whereas the second and last third was good because it brought in more spice, it brought in more wood profile, so it really and that also along with that the bitterness really helped with just being an overly sweet and creamy cigar. But this just I think that Tony apparently did good with this because a lot of people love the cigar. I mean, I hear rave reviews about this all over the forums.
Hmm.
But for me, uh, it was good, but I probably wouldn't reach any more than like 2, 3 of them in my
Right.
rotation.
Okay. I thought this was a really good cigar. Flavors were really dynamic in the first two thirds. Final third, they were a little bit static. But I think that's to be said for a lot of cigars, that the final third's not going to be their swan song. It's going to be a little bit of a letdown for most case. But like we were talking about, strength wise, slightly above medium for me. I know the first one kicked your butt. I didn't get that experience here, so I guess that's nice. I mean, I'm not looking for a beating, so that I was pleased to see that. I would recommend this more for a seasoned cigar smoker because I think the flavors are nuanced, and it's not going to be something that just in case the strength hits somebody, you don't want them to turn them off on cigars because you give them this, and you also don't want them to be like searching for flavors because they're more nuanced than just kind of in your face. So I would definitely say this should be an evening cigar or the final cigar of your smoking lineup, because it may have an effect on if you try to smoke other cigars after it. But the other thing is that it's good. I think it'll be a great after meal cigar. So if you have a steak dinner or something heavy, this cigar is like a perfect follow up to that. But this thing's, I liked it a lot, and I would say I would definitely smoke this on pretty frequently if I had a stock of them. So definitely a recommendation from my side.
Nice. A cigar that we widely differ for once.
Yeah, I mean not hugely. I mean, we'll talk. So score wise, I gave it a
Yeah.
7.67. You gave it a 6.47. So slightly over a full point difference, which is, I mean, that is a fair amount based on our system, but it's not like completely opposite sides of the spectrum. But I mean, it definitely, I got more enjoyment out of it than you did. So 6.47. You think that lines up kind of with what your experience was?
Yeah, I mean, the flavors was average, good within first, second, and last third.
Mm-hmm.
Construction was top notch, and as such, it calls for that kind of a score, and sounds good.
Yeah, definitely. My score perfectly reflects my experience. Really good experience. It would have definitely scored higher if the final third was as dynamic as the first two. Just didn't have that, but otherwise everything else was rated, very good. So all the construction items, even the pre-light stuff, even though that doesn't factor into our score, we both scored that very well. So great presentation and great flavors. So I think it's definitely a winner in my book. So. All right. Any final thoughts that you have on the cigar, Jiunn?
I want to say on the cigar, but I think something that we probably should be more of an advocate on is advising or recommending recommending our viewers to check out our review score and our rating system in general.
Right.
Because you guys should probably know that most forums and blogs rate cigars differently. We take our own approach to it. So as such, I think it's a good idea for you to take a quick look at it. I mean, it's a really quick, easy read through, but such as knowing that we don't score into anything in our pre-light experience, you should find that out why we don't do that, because, quite simply, we don't judge a book by its cover, right? But in general, I recommend folks to take a look at our editorial on that. So.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, our system isn't given 90s to 93s for good cigars, so that's just not how our system is set up. So,
Yeah.
But also don't think that cigars that are in the 6s and 7s are bad cigars. They're actually pretty good cigars. So
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you're just catching this video review on YouTube, be sure to check out the website, developingpalates.com, for the full written review. Catch all the pictures, all the neat stuff that's there. That's where you can click through and view our scoring system and things like that. So lots of good information there. So thanks again, Jiunn.
Thank you.
And we will catch everyone on the next episode. Thank you.